And welcome to the podcast, episode 3 of You May Not Agree With Us,
But
I'm Maris Lowery.
And I'm Eric Thomas.
And tonight's broadcast being brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You can reach them at 304-253-HELP, and also by Massey Power Sports. And Eric, it's hard to believe we're in week 3 of the high school season. They played 10 regular season games, and here we are, third of the way after Friday's games. We'll be third of the way through.
Yeah, and a big weekend last week for the county schools in Raleigh County, and a lot of the area schools, with all 4 schools in the county going undefeated on the weekend.
That's right. We'll start in 4A. Beckley with a huge victory as they travel to their arch rival Greenbrier East. They won that game 38-0. The first time they've shut East out since 1982. And boy, in a rivalry game, it's always great when you can really beat down your opponent.
Yeah, and on the road in their house and getting that shutout. And as you stated, since 1982, I remember a lot of things going on in 1982. So that's a big win for the Beckley team and a big feather in their cap.
And you know, not only obviously the players on this current Beckley team weren't born, maybe a lot of their parents may not have been born in 1982.
Yeah, because there's a couple movies that are like nostalgic now. E.T. was the #1 movie.
Right.
Michael Jackson was still dancing, doing Billie Jean, and singing Thriller at the time. So
yeah, I was 20 years old, 1982. Look how long ago that's been.
Yeah, I know. I was 10 and still mad at the Cowboys for losing to San Francisco 49ers
in January of '82. But a great win for Beckley, great win for Streets Rat. Beckley off to a good start as they go 2-0 in the young season.
Yeah, and with the young quarterback and the defense, you know, I don't care what game you play and what opponent, to shut someone out is huge, especially on the road. And to get that victory, and I think that gives them a lot of momentum heading into this Friday night.
Big win for Shady. They were down 13-0 on the road at James and Rowe, and they rallied to win that game 20-13. And not only did they rally to win that game, but their starting quarterback, Cal Curlicerto, he was sick, didn't even make the trip. So when they got behind, they easily could have folded the tent, but they didn't. They were resilient, even without their starting quarterback, and they come back and win the game.
And they rallied, and that's a big growing up for the Shady team as well, because as we talked to Coach Curlicerto during the preseason, you know, starting 3 games on the road, now he's 1-1 and going into this third. If you can come out 2-1, you know, early in the season, that's a big feather once again in the cap of the Shady Tigers, because their next games are at home, and I think the next 3 out of 4 probably will be at home, and a lot of momentum.
And a big win for Independence coming off that Thursday loss in week 1 against Herbert Hoover. They take the long trip up to Brook and they shut them out 20-0.
Yeah, and they did it with special teams. They made a few field goals. Michael Cuthbert made some field goals, and you know, big defensive stand again. You know, other than the second half of that of the early game against Herbert Hoover, the defense has really been consistent in that you can win a lot of games while, you know, the young quarterback Brock Green is playing really good. I think he's one of the area's leading passers, and you know what you get with the running back, Silas Nelson.
And Independence, just like Shady, has their first 3 games on the road.
Yeah, and it's wild. We said a lot of it's copy and paste, but Coach Lilly had the schedule thinking he was in Triple A, and it was hard to get games. And once he bumped down to Double A, he did the smart thing and honored his schedule, and you know, he's rewarded with a big win on the road at Brook.
And last but certainly not least, in the game you and I did, the Liberty Raiders, they only won 2 games each of the last 2 seasons. They got a big victory on the road, 34-13 over Pikeview. And what was unique about that game, Eric, as you and I did it, in the first quarter, Liberty ran 18 plays to 0 for Pikeview.
Yeah, and they dominated. They really dominated, controlled the offense, did what they had to do early on in that game. And then what was big in that game, as Shady didn't have their starting quarterback, Liberty lost their starting quarterback, and they were still able, you know, to take control of the game. The backup came in and played flawless. And what I like about this Liberty team, you can say improvement. Of all the teams that we cover, they were young last year, and they've really showed steady improvement in the 2 games we broadcast.
Yeah, you were talking about their quarterback, Jackson Workman. He got hurt right there when it was the game still 6-0, and the game still in the balance. And then they had the backup in there, Shea, and he played really well.
Yeah, he came in, threw a dart. Like, you remember, that shows you that they had faith in him, because I think his first or second play from scrimmage, he threw a dart for a big game, and I think that really got the team rolling and positive behind him.
And you know, of all the games that you and I have done together, I won't ever remember in recent years or any time where a team had 18 plays to 0 for the other team.
Yeah, never, not one play. And it was a comedy of errors, as we stated. Liberty scored first, and when they kicked off, and it was a rare occasion, too, where it hit the up back for Pikeview and bounced 25 yards back towards Liberty, and they were able to get that ball. And it was a pivotal sequence in that game because it kept Pikeview, from grinding it out, and Liberty was able to keep that defense on the field.
Tonight's podcast brought to you in part by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you're going to need a plumber. That's why you need this number, 304-253-HELP. Also by Massey Power Sports. And, hunting season's coming up, and you want to be able to go out in the woods, and you have your side-by-side and 4x4. I'm a little too old to do that, Eric, but you're younger than me. You might be able to do that.
Hey, my hunting days are over. The only thing I hunt is a Pepsi in the fridge right now when I get off from work. And another thing you need to add is, if you like this podcast, two old guys doing some local high school sports, like, subscribe, and share, please.
All right, now we get into week 3 of the games this week, and where we're going to start at, we're going to go in reverse. We're going to start with Liberty, as Liberty coming off that big win. They are 1-1. They go on the road at Mingo Central. The first time that Liberty and Mingo Central going to play, Mingo Central was 0-2. Coach Workman said that the reason they wanted to play the game because Liberty and Mingo Central are in the same, when they had regions in basketball, now they did away with the regions, but they were in the same region. And when you think of Mingo County and you think Raleigh County, you don't think that they would be in the same region, but I guess because of consolidation and classification, the way things are, they're in the same region. So he felt it made sense to go ahead and play them in football.
Yeah, and that's a big thing to do. And I think if Liberty, can control the way they've done it on the road and do everything in their power, just make it a regular game day, they have a good chance to go to Mingo and come out victorious.
Yeah, it's a long trip, and I think that's the biggest thing. How will Liberty handle that long trip? And, they got off to a good start at Pikeview last week, and let's see if they can carry that momentum into this game.
Yeah, and the thing is, playing a new opponent, it's real easy for Liberty to get up for Pikeview or Polka, they've played them once. You never know how kids are going to react, to not playing an opponent that you're used to playing, but the coaches will say the fields are 100 yards. Hey, just let's get out and let's get a victory.
Independence will be on the road for the 3rd straight week. They'll take on Nicholas County. Now, when they went to Nicholas County last year and back in 2021, you and I broadcast both those games. If you remember last year, how hard it rained up there in Summersville when you and I did the game. And now for the 2nd straight year, because of what you alluded to in our first segment of the scheduling, Independence has to go to Summers County to take on Nicholas County, Summersville, to play them for the 2nd year in a row up there.
And this is an interesting matchup. For some reason, Nicholas County, they seem to play, Independence had blown them out a couple of times. But a couple of those games, one game, they run the offense, they run the multiple, sets, kind of like a Rome County that we talked about earlier in the season that Shady played. But they're well coached, well schemed, and Coach Moore's. It'll be an interesting matchup for this Independence team on the road.
Yeah, Independence, I think they've grown up when they went to Herbert Hoover, even though they came up short. They took the long bus trip up to Brook. This is a good bonding message for Coach Lilly's team, and now on the road for the 3rd straight week.
Yeah, and even on the road at Herbert Hoover, you grow up quick because that was a playoff atmosphere there, and to go on Brook, you may have to travel with this tough schedule that they play to get in the playoffs and the AA playoffs. They may be on the road, and it's good. And any coach will say any experience like that is a good learning experience.
And speaking of Independence, we'll see future Independence high schoolers as you and I will be doing Park against Independence Middle on Thursday night on Video Productions. We're looking forward to that, our first middle school game of the year.
Yeah, and Independence really has it rolling in Raleigh County in middle school. They are the dominant team, so to speak. They're kind of taking over where Park, Trap Hills had their run. Park had years of dominance, right. And now Independence is really asserting itself in middle school level.
Yeah, Independence was undefeated, was county champion last year. They beat Trap Hills 62-6 in their first game this year, and now they'll be 1-0. Park lost their first game against Shady, so it'll be 1-0 Independence against 0-1 Park. We'll have that Thursday night on Video Productions.
Yeah, and looking forward to doing that one in Coal City.
All right, then we'll take a look at Shady against Summers County. Both teams are 1-1. You and I broadcast that game last year. You remember the terrible storm, the lightning, the rain, the delay. It was like after midnight before we finally got out of there.
The theme of that game was hurry up and wait, right? Because as you stated, I don't think we left there till about 11:45.
Yeah.
They got it in. It was an exciting game. Came down to a couple plays here or there, and Summers County has a real good ground game. So, Shady's defense will really probably have to be geared to stop the run this week.
Yeah, and that game last year you're talking about it. I remember it was, I think, just a one-score game. Shady was able to come up with a big defensive play late in that game to hang on for the win.
Yeah, and I think a turnover on a punt, if you can remember, player didn't get out of the way. Shady was able to get it and go ahead, and that was the deciding points of the game.
Yeah, the two things I remember about the game, it was an exciting game, and then, like I said, the weather delay with the rain, the lightning, and how long it took. And like I said, the game kicked off at 7, and we didn't get out of there after midnight.
Yeah, and it was good. The crowd, hey, we were only people left, but the only people there were the parents, there for the kids. But it was a tough night.
So it'll be the third straight game for Shady on the road to start their season. So it'll be a battle of two 1-1 teams.
Yeah, and I think Shady, and Coach Cool spoke on this, you need to come out victorious in games like this, especially defend your home field.
And now we'll talk about the 4A game. The Beckley Flying Eagles take on Parkersburg South. Beckley 2-0. We talked about their 17-10 road victory in week 1 in overtime against Washington. They beat down Greenbrier East on the road last week, 38-0. But now it's a different animal against Parkersburg South. Parkersburg South lost to Wheeling Park 35-14 in week 1, but they beat University 48-20. Now, since Beckley and Parkersburg South renewed here in the last 5 or 6 years, Parkersburg South has dominated the series, including a 56-20 win last year at South.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this, though. None of those games matter, in the grand scheme of thing. And I'm sure Coach Surratt, if you want to say something, you may say, I'm going to take the positives from that game. They moved the ball on Parkersburg South in both contests. A few miscues here and there, and the score snowballed. But I'm really thinking, and this is not to take anything from Washington or Greenbrier East. Parkersburg South has played two tough opponents. You don't know what University has, but Wheeling Park is, and University, perennial playoff teams. Woodrow Beckley took care of business on the road at Washington, took care of business at Greenbrier East. They probably secretly had this game circled because this is a litmus test for them. Multiple offense coming. Parkersburg can score through the air. Parkersburg South, through the air and on the ground. And Beckley is hanging its hat on defense right now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that this is one of the better offenses of all 10 games that Beckley will see all year. Maybe not the best offense, but one of the best offenses.
Well, you're going to have to defend the whole field. Going to be sound. Your linebackers have to be good. Your defensive line is going to have to get penetration, try to disrupt the running lanes and passing lanes, and your corners and safeties, whom I think Beckley is good on all three levels. And I want to see the matchup and see how these corners and safeties match up with the wideouts for Parkersburg South.
You and I will have that game Friday night on Video Productions, and of course you know this as well as Beckley knows it. In the games we did last year, can Beckley get off the field when it's 3rd and long? Because last year against Princeton and Oak Hill, to speak of it, even Greenbrier East, we did 4 Beckley games last year, but those 3 games that stand out in my mind, when it was 3rd and 12 or better, Beckley gave up big plays, gave up first downs, big plays, and gave up touchdowns on those 3rd
Yeah,
balls.
for instance, in the Oak Hill game, Beckley probably could have salted the game away. It was a big 3rd and 17. Oak Hill pinned back on their 4-yard line.
Deep in their own territory.
Deep in their territory. And you're thinking, get them off the field, get the punt, run the clock out the way Beckley was running. Didn't happen. They wind up losing a heartbreaker at home.
Yeah, so we'll see how that all unfolds. But another thing too, it should be a big crowd in Beckley. It's their home opener. They should be excited. Like you said, they have something to prove. But you make a great point. All those other games since the series I talked about renewed mean nothing, because I also looked this up. In 1977, the last time Beckley won the state championship, they beat Parkersburg South. They shut them out. Of course, that don't mean anything there. But I remember when I was a kid seeing Parkersburg South, because everybody knew Beckley and Parkersburg was such a big rivalry. And I remember in the 70s, they played them a couple times, and Beckley owned that series in the 70s and in the 80s, but South, like I said, has gotten the better of Beckley as of late, but none of that means anything going into Friday.
Nah, not going into Friday night, different year, different teams, probably some carryover players, but come Friday night, whoever executes the best, plays the best defense, wins the game.
And whoever can get off the field on 3rd down.
3rd down is the key down for Beckman.
We'll see how that unfolds. So once again, tonight's podcast brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You never know when you need a plumber until you need a plumber. And you can dial them up at 304-253-HELP. Also, tonight's podcast brought to you by Massey Power Sports. And, right now is the time to check out the great deals at Massey's. All right, now, Eric, as we're going to look to the top games in each class, and we're going to start, Man's a single A team. They're 2-0. They beat their arch rival Logan to start the season. Westside's off to a good start. It'll be Westside, who's in Double A, 2-0 at Man, a single A school, 2-0, and they'll play at Man on Friday
Well,
night.
having played at Man, that's a tough trip for Westside to go down. I don't care what class. Those two teams will get after it. And Westside being on the road, they're going to have to bring their A game. And I think that Westside is turning the program around. They have a good quarterback, good running back, wide out. So I think they have a good chance to go on the road with Man. But that's one of those games that you throw out the records when they link up, it's going to be a tough matchup.
And that's one of those games, if we'd have said in early August, one of these two teams, Man or Westside's going to be 3-0 after 3 games. Westside maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if you'd have thought that about Man. But one of these teams, whoever comes out of this with the win, is going to be 3-0.
And that's what's good about Friday Night Lights, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And now both teams are knocking on the door for starting the season 3-0.
And this would be great for Man because they're single A and they're playing up against a double A team and they get them at home. So if Man gets a big win, this is a lot of points out there for the Hillbillies.
Yeah, and that's that you want that because if you're Man, you can get that win. We get that bonus point, and that's all leaning to getting a home game in the playoffs.
We talked about Independence and Nicholas County earlier, but I do think that's the top double A game, and each team is 1-1. And you hate to think like maybe it's like a playoff type of game this early in the season, but it could be because the winner of this game I think is going to get a lot of points because whoever loses this game I think is going to go on and have a really good season, and so the winner I think is really going to benefit from this game.
Yeah, but Coach Lilly doesn't want to look down the road, but this is you circle this game, want to win this game, go on the road, take care of business because on the horizon you have a couple of tough battles. You have Princeton, and who cares what Bluefield's record is when you meet them. They're going to be fighting and scratching to try to get in the playoffs. So Nicholas County, I'm going to say a must-win for the Independence Patriots.
Well, Independence, you're right, and I don't know the order. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but you're talking about Bluefield, you're talking about Princeton. They also have Scott on the schedule, Independence, and you and I will have that game.
Yeah, that's upcoming.
Yeah, that'll be their home opener. That's following Nicholas County. That's what makes every game important, but I think as you stated, for Independence, I think that makes this game even that much more important.
Yeah, Coach Lilly's telling them, let's go 1-0 this week and worry about the other games as they come. But imperative to be focused, get on the road to Summersville, Nicholas County, and try to get a victory.
And I think the top battle in Class AAA, 2 local teams, Princeton, who's been outstanding with a big win over Capital to start the season, and they crushed their cross-county rival Bluefield last week. That was the worst beating that Bluefield's had since, I think, like 1900. And Princeton, 2-0, goes on the road to take on Oak Hill, who was 2-0.
And Oak Hill will be opening up their new artificial turf field. And what a good way to open it. I'm expecting a big crowd there. And the area's 2 top quarterbacks based on stats. And Princeton's quarterback, we got to see him. He was a freshman last year, played like a junior or a senior. Princeton's Markel Lowe is as good as advertised. I'm going to tell you, if you're Oak Hill, it's imperative that you stop the run because he's a game changer and he can take it home at any time. And
Princeton also has a Penn State signee in Jennings. And you talked about the quarterback. Of course, you have Richardson, quarterback Oak Hill, who was at Beckley last year. Now he's with Oak Hill this year.
And Richardson accounted for all the points for Oak Hill against Riverside last week. He threw for a touchdown and rushed for 2. I think he had 95 yards rushing, threw for over 200 yards. So you can bet that the film that Princeton Tigers are watching is going to be geared to really shut the quarterback down.
And I think it's another one of these games that the team that wins is really going to be sitting pretty because the loser of this game, I think, is going to go on and still have a really good season. There's a lot of points to be had in this game.
Yeah, you got to win this game and then cheer for that team that you beat the rest of the year.
All right, then we will close things out in this segment with the top 4A game, and we already kind of spoke at length about it. It's Parkersburg South at Beckley. And as we get inside the game, Parkersburg South making the 2.5 hour bus trip down here to Beckley. It's the home opener for Beckley. It should be a big crowd. We're going to thinking it's going to be a great night. You and I will have the game on Video Productions. I'm looking forward to it. 7:30 kickoff. You know, Beckley with a lot of momentum. Hey, they're starting the season 2-0. And this, I think, will maybe not define who Beckley is, but a chance for Beckley. They're at the corner. Can they turn the corner and get a big win?
Yeah, because, and this is one of these games for Beckley. A lot of people outside of Beckley, they probably think that Beckley doesn't have a chance. And I think Coach Surratt will coach this up. He's going to say, all we have is us. You know, we need to believe, because those games don't matter. This is a statement game. Let's go out and show the state that Beckley is back.
Yeah, and I think the key for Beckley is to get off to a good start.
Yeah, you have to. You have to eliminate those early errors. In the game 2 years ago, I had a chance to watch it against Parkersburg South. Beckley's driving. It was in a driving rain. Beckley's playing really well in that game, and a fumble. Parkersburg's first points was a scoop and score, and that's still in the possession. And after that, Beckley was fighting from behind. So if they don't land on the turf, you have to really manage the game, and I think Beckley will be in it in the fourth quarter with a chance to win.
If Beckley can get this win, if it's not the biggest win in the Street Surratt era in his 9th year, it's definitely one of the biggest wins if he can get it.
Yeah, if he can get it, and one of the other wins would probably be an overtime victory against Bluefield on the road when no one expected him to win that game as well.
All right, now we're going to switch gears to college football, as this segment, as all of our podcast segments, are brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating. You can check out Modley's 304-253-HELP. You never know when you need a plumber till you need a plumber. And also Massey Power Sports, and it's getting fall, it's getting hunting season. You need a side-by-side or a four-wheeler to get out there. You can get out there with your dog Tuck, right?
That's
I
right.
can see you, Eric, right now in your camouflage, getting out there, put a little hat on, a little cigar, and get out there on a 4x4,
Well, you
right?
need one of those if you kill a deer down here. It's not old school, drag them out.
That's
of the woods.
right.
You link it to the power sports vehicle and just pull it out of the woods.
All right, we've got to talk about the backyard brawl, WVU and Pitt. And I can tell you about this, and why the Pirates changed their 6:40 game with Kansas City to 1:05, I have no idea. This game kicks off at 3:30. This is going to be a logistic nightmare for, even if they only have 10,000 to go to the baseball game, the football game will be sold out. And I think it'll probably be 70-30 Mountaineer fans to Pitt fans, but it's a 3:30 kickoff for football. So between going down and tailgate and the baseball game at 1:05, which the game was originally scheduled for 6:40. Don't know why they changed the time. Maybe they thought they could have the baseball game before the football. But if you're going to the game, you better leave early if you're going to get down to the stadium.
Yeah, and you're right. And having gone to a lot of games up there, it's going to be, where are they going to park?
Right. That's what I'm saying, between baseball and football. And that's where, I guess, for your season ticket holders that already have your pre-lot, as the gold lot or the blue lot's the big thing in WU, they have their gold lots there at Pitt.
Yeah, but they have a lot of parking across the river. And I can remember going to a Thanksgiving night Pitt WVU game, and we had to park, and then you took the boat across. So that might alleviate some of it.
I got an idea. You can get on that 4x4 from Massey's and ride on up into the stadium.
Yeah.
How you like that? But you know what? I was watching a little bit of Pitt at Cincinnati last week, and Pitt was down 27-6, and they rallied to win that game 28-27. Of course, West Virginia beat Albany as people expected. But I think that this game will determine the winner of this game is going to be on a uphill climb.
Yeah.
And I think the loser, not that they can't get up there, but I think whoever loses this game, especially if it's West Virginia, I think they could maybe taper off a little bit.
And you think, if you're West Virginia, this will get that bad taste out of your mouth with the early loss to Penn State, because like I told on our second broadcast, I said, just chill. That game really, in the grand scheme of things, that game does not matter. This Pitt game is the game that you need to win, because that was an August game with Penn State. You need to go, if you're West Virginia, 3-0 here early in September.
Well, West Virginia is a 2.5-point favorite. My key to the game is that if West Virginia can keep Pitt from throwing the ball up top, I think West Virginia is good against the run. I think they struggle a little bit against the pass, and I think that'll be the key to the game, that if West Virginia can put pressure on the Pitt quarterback and not allow Pitt to go over up top.
Well, my assessment, too, on the pass defense, it's not everything it seems on the surface. I had a chance to watch, the Albany game, and the defensive backs were there. Sometimes you learn to play the ball, still just some technical stuff, and I even heard Neil Brown talk about it in the press conference. The Albany guy that started at quarterback was a D. I mean, he was at Wisconsin, and the wideout that was catching all the passes was at Oregon. So it's not like they were going against two subpar guys, which that's no excuse. You still should be able to snuff out the pass, but I think they'll make some corrections and be ready to take Pitt down.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a really tight game. Obviously, the odds maker thinks so too. It's 2.5. I think it's going to be close. And I think the team that wins is going to end up making maybe one or two more plays than the other team.
Yep, and it's going to come down to ball security. I think turnovers here or there, you can't turn it over. You can't win games by turning it over.
Well, Marshall will be off this week. Marshall won the first game as expected against Stony Brook, and then they went to Blacksburg. And a lot of people go to Blacksburg and come out of there with a loss. And Marshall come up a little short at Virginia Tech last week.
The offense sputtered. The defense played really well. The defense played well enough to be in it and have chances, but they gave up a special teams touchdown. Right. And even in the red zone, they didn't execute. One time, the quarterback for Marshall was scrambling and just slid down. He didn't understand the down and distance. We looked around like, what was he doing? And I think quarterback play has been below subpar for Marshall.
I think so too. And I didn't watch a lot of the game, but what people told me that were at the game, that watched the game, felt that was the case. And then, of course, Virginia Tech, they're off this week as well.
Yeah, and Virginia Tech, they a much needed victory after laying an egg in the first game.
All right, now we're going to switch our gears to the National Football League. And, we'll get to our barking dog. Call it the Tuck section because Tuck's the name of your dog, and he was the one that barked. And you and I both were really good, and we'll get to that in a minute. But perhaps the biggest game, not perhaps, I think you would agree, the biggest game of the weekend, Cincinnati at Kansas City. What a great win, an exciting win. Kansas City beat Baltimore, and I think Baltimore is one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFL. You'd have to rate Kansas City the best, trying to be the first team to three-peat. But Cincinnati laid an egg at home at New England, and they have played good at Arrowhead. I think Cincinnati and Kansas City is going to be a battle this year.
And you know what they call it, and this is Kansas City fans can say what they want. They're very sensitive to the word Cincinnati because Joe Burrow is the only active quarterback that has a winning record against Patrick Mahomes.
Right. And here's the thing, too, that Kansas City, they got the young man from Texas, Worthy, the receiver. A lot of teams passed up on him, and I saw this segment that NFL Network had. They're like,
Xavier Worthy, right?
Yes. He played at Texas, and they're like, how did you allow Kansas City to get who they're claiming is even faster than Hill, is the fastest guy in the NFL, and he scored 2 touchdowns, and now here you are. The Chiefs may be better this year than they've been the last 2 years.
Well, and you're right. He ran the fastest 40 time ever at the combine. And the reason they got him is because the Buffalo Bills traded the pick to him.
Right. So I don't get that. Even though Kansas City has had a tough time with Cincinnati, the game's at Arrowhead. I don't know if the Chiefs cover the touchdown, but I think the Chiefs win the game.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs win the game, and you never know. It's a good matchup, but if I was going to play it, I would take the Chiefs.
Yeah, now we talk about the Monday night game, the Battle of the Birds, the Dirty Birds, Atlanta, and they came up on the dirty side of the scoreboard last week, which was your barking dog. They'll take on Philadelphia, who beat Green Bay in Brazil.
Yeah, and Philly's riding high coming back from Brazil, and everybody thinks it's Eagles flies season. On paper, they have talent across the board, and boy, did Saquon Barkley really come out big. 3 touchdowns Friday night, and it really looked good for the Eagles.
I think that takes a lot of pressure off of Hurts now that they have an established runner like Barkley.
Yeah, and in the red zone, and that will make that read option whenever they run it. You're going to have to honor Saquon, and that'll free up passing and running lanes for Hurts.
Now, time for our final segment, the barking dog. Woof, woof. As
2-0, baby.
Yes, 2-0. Eric and I both won our games, and this segment brought to you in part by Massey's Power Sports. And you can grab your dog, get on that 4x4, go out in the woods, and you'll have your barking dog when he sees a deer. Well, you don't want him to bark too loud if he sees a deer, right? Don't want to chase it off.
That's right.
All right. So, Eric, you had Pittsburgh beating Atlanta. They did that. They were getting 3. They won the game straight up. Went without even kicking a field goal. And I had your Dallas Cowboys, and they smashed Cleveland, which you were there, Dallas busting up Cleveland. So now, who is your barking dog of the week?
And I'm going to take this one based on the playoff game last year. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Bucks on the road getting 7 at the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And I think the Tampa Bay Bucks, I don't know if they go in and win, but they're going to keep it close and cover that 7 points.
I like a barking dog that I think will win outright. I think Tennessee will beat the New York Jets. After watching the Jets Monday, and I know San Francisco's very good, that they made Aaron Rodgers look really old. They made him look like the 40-year-old that he is. And the 49ers got a great defense, but the Jets looked like they couldn't stop the run. Tennessee should have beat the Bears. They had them 17-0. They're playing at home. Tennessee can run the ball. I think Tennessee wins that game straight up.
Yeah, Tennessee did a great job in the free agency. They got Tony. They have Tony Pollard. They just need quarterback play. The defense is always going to be good, and I like that dog. That's going to be a good game. But 1-0. You were 1-0 last week. I was 1-0. Check out our barking dogs and see how we do next week.
See how we do. We also want to be able to like and share, right?
Like, share, and subscribe.
That's right. This is the Warden Broadcasting Network, and we're glad you were with us as this podcast was brought to you by Modley's Plumbing and Heating, 304-253-HELP, and by Massey's Power Sports. So this is episode 3. You may not agree with us,
But
I'm Maris Lowery.
and I'm Eric Thomas.
Have a great evening, everybody.
See you next week.